Tonight, before you close your eyes, let yourself drift into a story from a very distant past, a time when gods walked above the clouds, and the sky itself was ruled by a king who almost lost everything. But before we begin, if you find comfort in these stories, if you enjoy falling asleep to calm voices and ancient worlds, consider subscribing, so you'll always have a place to return to, night after night. Now, take a slow breath in, and gently exhale. Let your body sink deeper into rest, and allow the story to begin. High above the world of mortals, beyond the reach of mountains and storms, stood Mount Olympus. A place untouched by time, where the air shimmered with quiet power, and golden light stretched endlessly across marble halls. Here lived the gods. They did not sleep as humans did, nor did they age, but even immortals could feel something close to weariness. And on this night, something was different. The winds were quieter than usual. The stars seemed distant. And Zeus, king of the gods, ruler of the sky, sat alone. He was not a man easily troubled. His voice could shake the heavens, his lightning could split the earth, and his will had shaped the order of the world itself. But tonight, Zeus was silent. He sat upon his throne of carved stone and gold, his hand resting loosely on the armrest, his eyes fixed not on the world below, but somewhere far beyond it. As if listening. Or waiting. Long before this moment, before Olympus had known peace, there had been war. A war so vast, that even the mountains remembered it. The Titans had once ruled everything. Ancient beings of immense power, older than the sky itself, whose strength flowed through the bones of the earth. And Zeus had overthrown them. Not alone, never alone, but with the help of his brothers and sisters, and allies who believed in a new order. The war had lasted years. Some said decades. Others whispered that time itself had bent under its weight. Lightning had torn through the heavens, oceans had risen, the ground had split open, and the cries of gods and titans alike had echoed across the world. And in the end, Zeus had won. The titans were cast down, imprisoned deep beneath the earth, in a place so dark, so silent, that even memory struggled to survive there. Tartarus. A prison not just of stone, but of forgetting. And for a long time, that had been enough. Olympus rose. The gods found their places. The world settled into something like balance. But peace is never as permanent as it seems. Zeus shifted slightly, his fingers tightening for just a moment, before relaxing again. There it was. A feeling. Not a sound, not a voice, but something deeper. A tremor, not in the ground, but in the order of things. He stood slowly. The vast hall around him remained still, pillars stretching high into shadow, torches burning with steady, golden flames that never flickered. And yet, the air felt heavier. As if the world itself was holding its breath. Far below Olympus, far beneath even the lands of mortals, deeper than roots, deeper than forgotten caves, there was movement. Not sudden. Not violent. But inevitable. Like something waking, after a very long sleep. Zeus began to walk. Each step calm, measured, but there was purpose in it. He passed through the halls of Olympus, where other gods rested or wandered, unaware, or perhaps unwilling to notice what he already felt. Hera sat quietly in a distant chamber, her expression unreadable, as if she too sensed that something was not right, but chose silence over question. Athena stood near a balcony, looking out over the world below, her sharp mind always searching, always thinking, and for a brief moment, her gaze met Zeus's. Nothing was said. But something passed between them. Understanding. Concern. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, painted in deep shades of blue and black, stars scattered like distant fires. Zeus stepped into the open air. The wind greeted him, but it was not the usual wind. It was slower. Heavier. As if it carried something unseen. He raised his hand slightly, and a faint glow of lightning flickered between his fingers, soft, controlled, but ready. He listened again. And this time, he heard it. Not with his ears, but with something older. A memory. A presence. Something that should not have been there. Tartarus. He whispered, though no one stood close enough to hear. The word itself seemed to disappear into the night. But its meaning lingered. Deep below, the prison of the Titans had always been sealed. Guarded not only by walls, but by forces far older than the gods themselves. Nothing escaped Tartarus. Nothing returned. That was the truth Zeus had believed. The truth he had built his rule upon. Until now. A faint pulse moved through the air again. Subtle. But undeniable. Like a heartbeat, far below the surface of reality. Zeus's expression hardened. Not fear. Not yet. But something close to it. Because if something was rising from Tartarus, then the war was never truly over. He turned, his voice finally breaking the silence of Olympus. Summon the council. The words were calm, but they carried across the entire mountain. And one by one, the gods would hear. But even before they gathered, even before questions were asked, even before the truth could fully rise to the surface, the first crack had already formed. Not in stone. Not in sky. But in certainty. And far below, in the endless dark, something opened its eyes. Take a slow breath, and let the image fade gently, as the night continues, and the story deepens. Stay with the calm of the night, let your breath remain slow, steady, unhurried, and allow the story to continue. The call of Zeus did not echo like thunder. It did not shake the heavens, nor did it demand attention. And yet, every god on Olympus heard it. Not as sound, but as certainty. One by one, they began to gather. The great hall of Olympus slowly filled with quiet presence, soft footsteps, flowing robes, the faint shimmer of divine light. No one spoke at first. There was no need. Something in the air already said enough. Hera arrived early, her expression composed, her posture perfect, as always. She took her place without a word, her gaze drifting briefly toward Zeus, searching, measuring, but he did not look back. Not yet. Athena entered next, her movements calm, deliberate, her eyes already sharp with thought. She did not sit immediately. Instead, she observed. The room, the silence, the subtle tension resting between the pillars and the light. And then, quietly, she took her place. Ares came with heavier steps, less patient, less quiet, the energy around him restless, like a distant storm waiting to break. He glanced around, as if expecting conflict, almost hoping for it. But there was none. Only stillness. Apollo and Artemis arrived together, like twin reflections of light and shadow, their presence softer, but no less aware. Hermes followed, though even his usual ease, his lightness, seemed quieter tonight, as though the weight in the air had found him too. And then, the hall was full. Zeus stood before them. Not towering. Not raging. But still. And it was that stillness that unsettled them the most. For a long moment, he said nothing. His gaze moved slowly across each of them, as if measuring not their strength, but something deeper. Trust. Resolve. Readiness. Finally, he spoke. There is a disturbance. His voice was low, steady, carrying through the vast space without effort. No one interrupted. No one questioned. It comes from below. A faint shift moved through the gathered gods. Not fear. But recognition. Old memories, long buried, began to stir. Athena was the first to respond. Tartarus. It was not a question. Zeus gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Ares leaned forward slightly, a faint spark of interest in his eyes. So, something is trying to rise? His tone carried something dangerous, something almost eager. Zeus did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the open sky beyond the hall. As I listen, he said quietly, it is not trying. A pause. It is waking. Silence followed. Deeper than before. The word lingered. Waking. Not escaping. Not breaking free. But awakening, as if it had never truly been gone. Hermes shifted slightly, his usual quick thoughts moving faster now, searching for meaning, for explanation. That shouldn't be possible. He murmured. No, Athena said softly. It shouldn't. Hera's voice came next, calm, controlled, but edged with something sharper beneath. The Titans were bound, she said. Sealed. Forgotten. Another pause. Unless. She added, her gaze narrowing slightly. Something has changed. Zeus finally turned back to them. And for the first time, there was something visible in his expression. Not fear. But wait. The prison holds, he said. For now. A quiet ripple of tension moved through the hall. For now. Athena leaned forward slightly, her voice thoughtful, precise. If Tartarus itself has not been broken, then the disturbance must come from within. She paused. Something inside is stirring. Ares exhaled slowly, almost like a satisfied breath. Then we go down there, and end it. Simple. Direct. As always. But Zeus shook his head. No. The word was firm, unyielding, but not harsh. Ares frowned. Why wait? Because, Zeus replied, his voice still calm, but heavy now. This is not movement of force. He raised his hand slightly, and a faint trace of lightning flickered again, softer than before, almost like a pulse. It is older than that. The gods listened. Even Ares. Zeus lowered his hand. What I feel, he continued, is not anger. Not rebellion. Not war. Another pause. It is, return. The word settled into the space between them. Strange. Uncertain. Uncomfortable. Apollo spoke quietly now, his voice thoughtful, distant. Return, of what? Zeus did not answer immediately. And that, more than anything, unsettled them. Because there were very few things Zeus did not know. And fewer still, he hesitated to name. Far below them, far beneath the world, the darkness of Tartarus remained unchanged. Still. Endless. Silent. But deep within that silence, something shifted. Chains that had not moved for ages, tightened, then loosened, not breaking, but responding. The ground itself, if it could be called ground, seemed to breathe, slowly, heavily, as if remembering something it had long tried to forget. And in that vast, unseen depth, a presence stirred. Not fully awake. Not yet aware. But no longer asleep. Back on Olympus. Athena's thoughts moved quickly. If it is a return, she said slowly, then it must belong to something that was never truly destroyed. Her eyes lifted to Zeus. Something we believed was gone. The memory of the war returned, not as images, but as weight. The Titans had fallen. Yes. But not all endings are complete. Hera's voice softened slightly, though it carried a quiet intensity. There were things, she said, even during the war, that we did not fully understand. A pause. Things we chose not to. Zeus closed his eyes for a brief moment. Not in weakness, but in recognition. There are always truths, even gods, leave buried. The torches along the hall flickered gently. For the first time that night. A small movement. But enough. Hermes noticed it immediately, his gaze sharpening. "Did you see that?" No one answered. They all had. The flames steadied again. But something had changed. Zeus opened his eyes. "It has begun." Not loudly. Not violently. But undeniably. A shift in the balance. A quiet movement beneath everything. Like the first crack in ice, long before it breaks. He looked at them, each of them, his voice calm, but carrying something deeper now. "We will not rush." A pause. "We will not descend into Tartarus, blindly." Another breath. "We will watch." Ares leaned back slightly, dissatisfied, but silent. Athena nodded once. She understood. Because whatever was waking, was not something to be met with force alone. It was something older. Something patient. Something that had waited, longer than any of them. And as the gods of Olympus sat together in that vast hall, surrounded by golden light and endless sky, a quiet truth began to settle in. This was not the beginning of a war. Not yet. This was the moment, before it. And far below, in the deep, unending dark, the present stirred again, just a little more awake than before. Take another slow breath, let your thoughts drift gently, as the night continues to unfold, and the story moves closer to what was never meant to return. Let the rhythm of the story remain soft, unhurried, like distant waves in the night. There is no need to rush, only to listen, and slowly drift. Time passed on Olympus, though it did not pass as it does in the world below. There were no ticking clocks, no fading light, no clear beginning or end. Only a quiet sense of waiting. The gods did not leave. Not truly. They remained, moving slowly through the halls, speaking in low voices, or not speaking at all. Even Ares, who rarely knew stillness, had grown quieter. There was nothing yet to fight. And that unsettled him more than war. Athena stood once more at the edge of Olympus, looking down toward the distant world of mortals. From here, everything seemed peaceful. Cities rested under the night, oceans breathed in slow rhythm, and human lives continued, unaware. Unaware of what stirred beneath everything they knew. She closed her eyes briefly. Listening, as Zeus had listened. Reaching, not with power, but with understanding. And then, she felt it. Not as strongly as Zeus. Not as clearly. But enough. A presence. Vast. Ancient. And not alone. Her eyes opened. There was a difference now. Before, it had been a single disturbance. A quiet pulse. But now, it was layered. Like something surrounded by echoes. Or shadows. She turned, already knowing where to go. Zeus had not returned to his throne. Instead, he stood at the far edge of Olympus, where the sky stretched endlessly into darkness, and the stars seemed almost within reach. He had not moved for some time. Not physically. But his awareness remained far below. "You feel it too," Athena said quietly as she approached. It was not a question. Zeus did not turn. "Yes." A pause. "It grows." Athena stepped closer, her voice calm, but more focused now. "It is not one presence anymore." Another pause. "There are others." The wind shifted slightly, passing between them, carrying something colder than before. Zeus's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. They were never alone. The words were quiet. But they carried weight. Athena considered this. During the war, the Titans had not been a single force. They had been many. Bound together, by power, by age, by something deeper than alliance. If one stirred, others might follow. Not all titans were equal, Athena said carefully. Some were stronger. Older. She paused. Some were never fully understood. Zeus's hand tightened slightly at his side. A small movement. But noticeable. There was one, he said slowly, as if the words themselves were reluctant to be spoken. Whose silence was always more dangerous than the others. Athena's gaze sharpened. Which one? For a moment. Zeus said nothing. And in that silence, something far below shifted again. Stronger this time. Closer. The air around Olympus grew heavier. Not enough for mortals to notice. But for gods, it was unmistakable. The first of them, Zeus said at last. Before the war turned. Before victory. Before Olympus. The one who did not fight as the others did. Athena's thoughts moved quickly. There were many titans. But only a few, who had chosen patience over force. Not Kronos, she said quietly. Zeus shook his head. No. A pause. Older. And then, very softly, he spoke the name. Hyperion. The word seemed to settle into the air, like something remembered, and yet not fully understood. The Titan of light. Of the sun, before it had a name. A being not of chaos, but of constant presence. Watching. Waiting. Athena felt a subtle shift in her thoughts. A connection. A realization forming. If Hyperion wakes. She said slowly. Then this is not destruction. A pause. It is restoration. The word lingered. Zeus finally turned to look at her. And for the first time, there was something unmistakable in his expression. Concern. Yes, he said quietly. Far below, the darkness of Tartarus was no longer still. A faint glow had begun to form. Not bright. Not blinding. But present. Like the first hint of dawn, in a place that had never known light. Chains, vast and ancient, stretched across a form that could not be fully seen. Not because it was hidden. But because it was too large, too old, too far beyond simple shape. And yet, something about it was calm. Not violent. Not raging. Awake. The glow pulsed once. Then again. Each pulse sending a quiet wave through Tartarus itself, through the earth above, through the unseen fabric that held everything in place. On Olympus, the reaction was immediate. The sky flickered. Just for a moment. A brief disturbance in the endless calm. Apollo looked up suddenly, his connection to light sharper than most. His expression shifted, not to fear, but to something closer to recognition. This light. He murmured. It feels. He did not finish. Because he already knew. Artemis stood beside him, silent, her gaze steady, but watchful. Hermes moved quickly now, no longer able to remain still. That's not possible, he said under his breath. We sealed them, all of them. Not sealed, Hera said quietly from across the hall. Contained. Her eyes were distant now. Focused on something far beyond the walls of Olympus. And containment is not the same as ending. A low, almost imperceptible sound moved through the air. Not quite a rumble. Not quite a voice. But something in between. Zeus felt it immediately. Stronger now. Clearer. It was not just a presence anymore. It was awareness. Something was looking back. Not at Olympus. Not at the gods. At him. For the briefest moment. Zeus stood completely still. And in that moment, something ancient passed between them. Not words. Not thoughts. But recognition. As if the past had reached forward and touched the present. The glow in Tartarus grew slightly brighter. Still soft. Still distant. But undeniable. And with it, came something else. Not force. Not violence. Change. On Olympus, the gods felt it. Not all in the same way. But enough. Athena's mind sharpened further. This is not an attack, she said. Not yet. Ares frowned, restless again. Then what is it? Zeus answered, his voice quieter than before, but heavier. It is a beginning. Not of war. Not of destruction. But of something returning, to claim what it once was. And as the night stretched on, and the stars remained distant and still, a quiet truth began to settle over Olympus. The world they had built, the order they believed was permanent, was no longer certain. And Zeus, king of the gods, felt something he had not felt since the war against the Titans. Not fear. But the possibility of losing. Take a slow breath, let the weight of the story soften, as it drifts gently forward, into what comes next, because the night isn't over yet, and Olympus has only just begun to feel the change. Let everything slow once more, let the tension soften at the edges, as the story moves, gently, toward its end. The glow beneath the world did not fade. It did not rush, it did not surge, it simply continued. Steady. Patient. Unavoidable. On Olympus, no one spoke for a long time. There was nothing left to question. Only something to face. Zeus stood at the edge of the sky, unmoving, yet no longer distant. He was present now. Fully. Aware that what he had once buried had not been undone, only delayed. Athena remained nearby, silent, her thoughts no longer searching for answers, but preparing for what would come. Ares had grown still again, though not from calm, but from something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Even the winds around Olympus had changed. They no longer carried the light, effortless motion of a world at peace. They moved slower now, as if listening. And far below, in the endless depth of Tartarus, the light continued to grow. Not into fire. Not into destruction. But into presence. The vast shape beneath the chains shifted once more. Not struggling. Not resisting. Simply rising, into awareness. And then, for the first time, it spoke. Not in sound. Not in language. But in something older. A resonance, that moved through the earth, through the sky, through the very fabric of existence itself, until it reached Olympus. Until it reached Zeus. And in that moment, everything else faded. The hall, the gods, the sky. All of it became distant. And Zeus stood alone, facing something he had not faced since the beginning of his rule. Not an enemy. But an origin. The presence did not demand. It did not threaten. It did not rise in anger. It simply existed. Fully. Completely. And within that existence, there was a question. Not asked in words. But understood all the same. Why? Why had they been cast down? Why had the order been changed? Why had the old world been replaced? Zeus did not answer immediately. For the first time in ages, there was no lightning in his hand. No command in his voice. No certainty beneath his feet. Only memory. He remembered the war. The chaos. The endless struggle. The need for something different. Something stable. Something that could endure. He remembered the choice. Not just to win. But to rule. And now, he felt the weight of that choice, reflected back at him. The presence in Tartarus did not move closer. It did not push. It waited. Because it did not need to force anything. It had time. More time than gods. More time than the world itself. On Olympus, the others felt something shift. Not in the air. Not in the ground. But in Zeus. Hera's gaze sharpened slightly. Athena stepped forward, just a fraction. Because whatever was happening, was not battle. It was something deeper. Zeus finally spoke. Not aloud. Not for the others. But into that vast, silent presence. The world needed change. The response came not as rejection, not as anger. But as understanding. And something else. Something quieter. Inevitable. The light in Tartarus pulsed again. Stronger now. And for a brief moment, the chains around the ancient form loosened. Not broken. Not yet. But no longer absolute. Zeus felt it. Clearly. This was the moment. Not of war. But of truth. He could not destroy this. He could not command it. He could not simply strike it down as he had before. Because this was not something separate from the world. It was part of it. Older than Olympus. Older than the throne he stood upon. And in that realization, something within Zeus shifted. Not weakness. But acceptance. He lowered his hand completely. The last trace of lightning fading into nothing. On Olympus, the others saw it. And they understood. This would not be a battle of force. The presence in Tartarus did not rise further. It did not break free. Because it no longer needed to. It had already changed something far more important. Certainty. The belief that Olympus was eternal. Untouchable. Unquestioned. That belief was gone. And in its place, there was something quieter. Something more fragile. Balance. The light beneath the world slowly softened. Not fading, but settling. As if the awakening had reached its purpose. The presence did not disappear. It remained. Watching. Aware. But no longer rising. For now. On Olympus, the air grew lighter. Not as it had been before. But enough. Ares exhaled slowly, tension leaving him in a way he did not fully understand. Hermes stilled, his thoughts finally quiet. Apollo looked toward the horizon, sensing that the light he knew was no longer the only one. Athena turned her gaze to Zeus. You chose not to fight. Zeus remained still for a moment, before answering. Yes. A pause. Because this was never something I could win. The words were calm. Honest. And in that honesty, there was strength of a different kind. Hera watched him quietly. No judgment. No approval. Only recognition. The sky above Olympus remained vast and endless. But now, it felt different. Not as a place of absolute rule. But as part of something larger. And as the night slowly continued, the world below remained at peace. Unaware of how close the balance had come to changing forever. Zeus returned to his throne, but not as he had been before. He sat. Not as an unchallenged king, but as a guardian of something far more delicate than power. And far below, in the deep silence of Tartarus, the ancient presence rested, awake, waiting. Not for war. But for the next moment, when the world might shift again. And it always would. Because nothing, not even gods, remain unchanged, forever. Now, let the story fade gently, like the last light before sleep, let your thoughts grow quiet, your breath soft, and steady, and carry with you, only the calm of distant stars, and the slow, peaceful rhythm, of a world, still turning. Good night.